Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's my pleasure to welcome Rory McIlroy back to the Media Centre. Rory, congratulations on a great start of the season. 2 victories, the AT&T in Pebble Beach and the TPC at Sawgrass. How have you prepared for this week and how are you feeling coming into the tournament?
Yeah, feeling good. As you said, it's been a nice way to start the year with the 2 victories at Pebble Beach and Sawgrass. You know, had a decent showing last time out when I played at Houston a couple of weeks ago. Had a good weekend, and then yeah, I've had a couple of visits up here, and that's it's been I'm very glad to do that, especially with the weather yesterday. So yeah, it's been a really good sort of lead into it. Spent a week at home and had Michael Bannon over, and we were doing some practice and, played quite a bit of golf and tried to stay as sharp as I could. So, yeah, it's been a good week, and obviously, looking forward to getting this thing going on Thursday.
Brilliant, thank you. I will open up for questions. Neil?
Yeah, morning, Rory. Just first of all, just check on your elbow, any nagging issues with it? And secondly, at Sawgrass, it was Devil Wears Prada that got you in the mood? Anything you got planned?
In the mood for what?
To win. Anything planned for this week? Similarly.
Elbow's good. Elbow's good. I got a little bit of treatment on it last week, and it's all good. Yeah, I've gotten into Bridgerton the last. I didn't think I would. I was very against watching it, but Erica convinced me. So we're on a bit of a Bridgerton kick this week. Yeah.
Gary?
Rory, 6 years ago, you referenced Abe Lincoln, and it was basically talking about the impact of results and that not to be damaged by setbacks, as he had. How has that evolved, your position on looking at things as results, as not being success or failures, but merely outcomes?
Yeah, I think, I've, over the course of my career, I feel like I've showed quite a lot of resilience from setbacks. And I feel like I've done the same again, especially, post June last year and, the golf that I've played since then. And it's something that I'm really proud of. Look, you have setbacks and you have disappointments, but as long as you can learn from them and move forward and try to put those learnings into practice, I think is very, very important. I feel like I've showed that quite a lot over the course of my career. But yeah, look, when you have a long career, like I have had, luckily, you sort of just learn to roll with the punches, the good times, the bad times, knowing that if you do the right work and you practice the right way, that those disappointments will turn into good times again pretty soon.
Hey, Rory. You've been working with Bob Rotella for a bit. I'm just kind of curious, in your words, what he brings to the table for you, how valuable he's been to you, and are there any ways you guys have shifted your approach or altered your approach leading into this week?
Yeah, not really. Look, I first met Bob back in 2010. So I've known him for quite a while, 15 years, and we've sort of, we've always chatted, even if we haven't worked officially together. We've always kept in touch. And I think, as Gary was saying there, talking about not getting too much into results and outcomes, we talk about trying to chase a feeling on the golf course. Like, if you're on the golf course, what way do you want to feel when you're playing golf? And that's something that is it's not something that obviously I just do here, but I do every week that I compete. And if I can chase that feeling and make that the important thing, then hopefully the golf will take care of itself.
Rory, you've had many different versions of your approach to the preparation process for Augusta National. How did you land on this year's iteration for the preparation process?
Yeah, I think it's pretty similar for me over the years up until the Players, and then you've got a decision to make for, you've got 3 weeks leading up to this event, and it's Tampa, Houston, and San Antonio. 3 places that I've played Tampa once. I've played San Antonio a few times, and that was the first time I'd played Houston at that particular golf course. And you know, if this week wasn't the week that it was, I'd probably take those 3 weeks off. But I knew that I needed to at least have one more competitive week leading in here. So I opted for Houston rather than San Antonio just to change it up more than anything else, bit of a change of scenery. But that was really it. I don't, you know, I try to prepare for this golf tournament pretty similarly to what I do most other weeks. Like, I think because it's a golf course we go back to every year, there's, you know, maybe there's a little more knowledge that's needed for, you know, certain shots, and definitely you're going to face particular shots on this golf course that you don't really face any other week of the year. So, you know, coming up here a couple of times, doing a little bit more preparation on some of those shots on the golf course, I think is important. But, you know, once we get into the tournament week, like now, you know, you try to treat it the same, and you just try to go through, you know, basically check the boxes. You know, I want to, you know, do certain things, and I want to, you know, do my drills on the putting green and make sure I, you know, get my range sessions in, just so that, you know, I've checked the boxes and feel as comfortable as I can, you know, going out there on Thursday morning.
Bob?
Rory, do you recall coming here for the first time and what you thought of how the golf course suited you and how that has evolved? I mean, did you have a sort of a feeling right away like, wow, this is a place that I'm going to love, or did it take some time, and has that changed?
Yeah, I mean, look, when I was just happy to be driving down Magnolia Lane. Like, there was no thought of whether this is going to be good for me or bad for me. It was just an absolute thrill of a lifetime to drive down that, you know, drive down that lane at whatever it was, 19 years old, and, you know, be playing in my first Masters. So, I think it's you know, with how I hit the ball, especially back then, I hit the ball a lot more right to left back then, so I felt like it was a golf course tee to green that set up really well for me. And as everyone knows, like, this golf course is all about the, you know, around the green shots and on the greens, and making sure that you're comfortable with those. But, you know, as I said, like, you're going to face shots and putts on this golf course that you don't necessarily face every other week of the year. So that's where I think the most, you know, that's where the most thought and the most time has to be spent, and just making sure that you're comfortable around that, on that part of the game. But yeah, I've always loved this course. I've always loved the, you know, people ask me if you could only play one golf course for the rest of your life, what would it be? And you know, I think walking around this place every day would be pretty cool.
Don?
Rory, excuse me, for many years now, the narrative at this time of year is this could be Rory's year. And given your start in 2025, now it's this really could be Rory's year. Does the pressure or expectation feel any different to you? And if so, how do you manage it?
No, it's just narratives. It's noise. And it's just trying to block out that noise as much as possible. I need to treat this tournament like, you know, all the other tournaments that I play throughout the year. And yeah, look, I understand the narrative and the noise, and, you know, there's a lot of anticipation and build up and coming into this tournament each and every year, but I just have to keep my head down and focus on my job.
Taylor?
I want to go back to what you just said about only playing this golf course for the rest of your life if you could only pick one. Why is this place so special to you?
Yeah, there's the history, you know, those sort of spring evenings where I would sit down with my dad and watch this tournament. You know, I think all that sort of comes back to me as well, and you know, remembering why I fell in love with the game. And I think it's obviously just a beautiful place. You know, I don't think there's a more beautiful golf course on earth. You know, it's like you're playing golf in the prettiest park in the world, basically. So I think just for that, but yeah, look, the history and everything that this club and this course means to the game of golf, I think all that goes into it. But you know, it's just I feel, you know, you could spend all day out there and time would go by very quickly. And I think That's one of the big things.
Chris?
Rory, Colin Morikawa caught some criticism at the Players for saying he owes the media nothing after he left Bay Hill early. You obviously caught some heat too after doing that at Pinehurst. The conversation after situations like that sometimes is, in comparison to other professional athletes, golfers can be a little more sensitive. I'm wondering if you think that's a fair or unfair assessment.
Well, he's right. Not that I think he could have worded it a little bit better, but look, every other athlete, whether it be in the NBA, NFL, they're obligated to speak to you guys after a game. We're not. So, you know, whether that's something that the PGA Tour looks to in terms of putting that into their rules and regulations, but as long as that's not the case, and we have that option to opt out whenever we want, you know, expect guys to do that from time to time.
Doug?
Or you'd made a comment when you left the Players, I think on the Golf Channel set, that you have to be willing to get your heart broken, and you'd had a spell where you just didn't want to do that. Why do you think that was, and what have you figured out about that?
I think it's a self-preservation mechanism. You know, we're all, you know, you don't want to. Yeah, I think that it's more. Yeah, I don't know. It's just more of a thing where you're trying to not put 100% of yourself out there because of that. I mean, it happens in all walks of life. You know, why do you know, at a certain point in someone's life, someone doesn't want to fall in love because they don't want to get their heart broken, or they, you know, so there people, you know, I think instinctually as human beings, we hold back sometimes because of the fear of getting hurt, whether that's a conscious decision or a subconscious decision. And I think I was doing that on the golf course a little bit for a few years. But I think once you go through that, and once you go through those heartbreaks, as I call them, or disappointments, you get to a place where you remember how it feels, and you wake up the next day, and you're like, yeah, life goes on. It's not as bad as I thought it was going to be, and I think that's the, you know, it's going through those times, especially in recent memory, where, you know, the last few years I've had chances to win some of the biggest golf tournaments in the world. It hasn't quite happened. But life moves on, and you know, you dust yourself off and you go again. And I think that's why I've become a little more comfortable in, you know, laying everything out there and you know, being somewhat vulnerable at times.
Was that after St. Andrews, after LA? Do you think that the sun rose and you realized it?
No, I think it was after the 2019 season. I remember I'd had a great year. I'd won, you know, 4 times around the world. I'd won the FedEx Cup. I had my best statistical season ever, but I didn't have a great season in the major championships. And I sort of made a commitment to myself from 2020 onwards that these 4 weeks a year I was going to, you know, I went through a time of like, well, I'll just prepare and I'll just do the same things that I do for every other week of the year, but knowing that they're not every other week of the year. So, yeah, I made a commitment to myself to sort of earmark these a little bit more and to give a little bit more of myself in these weeks. And I think if you see my major record since 2020, you know, COVID was a bit of a weird year, but 2020 up until now, compared to say the 5 years previous after I'd won the PGA at 14, I think you'll see a big difference in that. And that was just sitting down and reflecting at the end of 2019, thinking that, you know, I need to approach these a little bit differently again.
Rory, what have you seen in terms of the golf course and how it's playing down here?
Oh, sorry, Jeff. Yeah.
How the golf course is playing, and in particular, any tee shots where your approach might change a little because of the tree loss?
Yeah, so, you know, I played 2 Mondays ago, the Monday of Houston, and the course was, you know, it was pretty fast, pretty firm. The members had just had their Jamboree tournament, so the course was in great shape. It was dry. probably a little more similar to hopefully how it's going to play by this weekend. And then last Monday was a little soft and slow, probably what it's like out there right now after the rain yesterday. But yeah, I think the biggest thing, I don't think the course plays any differently. You know, you've got the 4 new greens on 1, 8, 15, and 16, which I think everyone saw, you know, the ladies playing here on Saturday, that, you know, those greens always are a little bit firmer, especially 15, for example, watching the ball shoot through that green. But from a tee shot perspective, there's a couple of tee shots that are maybe a little less visually intimidating. You know, thinking like a tee shot like 10, with a little bit of that tree loss on the left side. You know, your target there is that that sort of TV or that camera tower down there at the bottom of the hill. You used to not be able to see that, and now you can see that pretty clearly. So, you know, visually it looks like you don't have to turn the ball as much as you used to. You know, there's a little bit more room on the right side of 3 if you want to hit driver up there. You know, there's a couple of overhanging trees that aren't there anymore. But really, apart from that, I think it's pretty much the same. But you know, definitely a couple of tee shots that look a little bit different.
Scott?
Well, Jeff asked part of what I was going to say, but the fact that you and Shane are here and Ireland has not won a green jacket yet, and it's obviously high on both of your guys' lists. What does it mean? And what do you think it could mean to Ireland if one of the two of you were able to get that?
Yeah, I don't know. You know, we went through a really nice period there from 2007 through 2014. Obviously, you had Padraig winning the Opens in the PGA. You know, you had GMAC winning at the US Open at Pebble, Clarkey at St. George's. You know, I went on my run, and obviously Shane did what he did in 19 at Portrush. So, you know, we've had success in pretty recent memory. So, I don't know. I don't know if it, you know, is, you know, you're sort of saying that one major may be worth a little more than the other majors. I don't know, but you know, it'd be a pretty big deal, just like all the rest of them were.
Last 2 questions, Claire.
Hi, is there a book that you're reading this week or maybe heading into this week that you can share with us?
For the first time in a long time, I'm reading a novel. I actually got some fiction into my life. It's a John Grisham book.
Which one?
The Reckoning.
Okay.
Yeah. It's got off to a pretty good start.
Nick.
Question about Bernard Langer. With this being his last Masters, I was curious how you view his legacy as a pro.
Yeah, I mean, just amazing. You know, sort of like the Iron Man of golf. You know, I've played with Bernard a little bit. I played a couple of times with him in my rookie year on the European Tour in 2008. Played with him in Germany once actually, which was really cool. And then I actually played with him in the 3rd round of the 2020 Masters. Yeah, I mean, he's been amazing. I mean, just you know, what he's been able to do on the champion, you know, what he did in his regular career, but especially what he's done post 50. I think just to have that competitive spirit and have that competitive fire burn for so long, you know, I don't know if I would be able to do that. But I think it's unbelievably impressive, and you know, hopefully he gets the send off that he wants this week.
Last question, Joy.
Throughout the years, through your highs and lows, you have had various people to fall back on, like Bob, Brad, Harry. But how important is Poppy becoming a part of the team, especially during the lows that you have to experience?
Yeah, look, it definitely makes the lows a little easier to take. But yeah, look, the highs are going to be high anyway, but it's amazing. I think especially, you know, after the Players, I think it was the first time that she sort of realized what I did, which was really cool. Also a little scary at the same time, but it's amazing that I can share these things with her and with Erica and the, like the day after the players, she went into school and, there's a couple of kids that had said some stuff to her, and she came home to me that day and said, "Daddy, are you famous?" I said, I said, "It depends who you talk to." So, it's a bit of a double-edged sword. You have to, temper the expectations sometimes. But look, she's, as everyone knows that's had children, it's an amazing addition to life, and it's great that she's here this week.
Rory, thank you so much, and have a great week. Hope we see a lot of you this week.
Thank you.